Hello. Didn't book a room for me on our family trip? My brother Jake sneered. We reserved rooms for me, my wife, and my child. We're the real family. I see, I calmly responded. Then I'll leave. And I walked out. Hours later, after ignoring dozens of their calls, something unthinkable happened. On Thanksgiving morning, as I woke up in my New York City apartment, the familiar anxiety crept into my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This year, the venue was the Westward, a luxurious resort hotel in Malibu, California. It was our yearly family outing, and as usual, all expenses were being borne by my grandfather, Howard Carter. As I gave my suitcase a final check, I exhaled heavily and looked at myself in the mirror. My name is Laura Carter, and I'm 35 years old. I'm a research director. I earn $130,000 per year. I live alone in New York. Over the years, I have steadily built my assets through well-thought-out investments. Money is important, but dignity is something even more precious. I remembered what my grandfather once said. He is a successful businessman who made his fortune in real estate development. Everything I know about financial management, I learned from him. Since childhood, he taught me with great enthusiasm about investments and asset management. He is the only one in the family who truly understands me. And then there is my brother Jake. A former airline pilot who became a full-time husband, Jake leads an apparently affluent life with his wife and their 7-year-old daughter, Emily. But this lifestyle wouldn't be possible without monthly support from our grandfather. Their high mortgage payments, car loans, and Emily's private school tuition, everything is covered by grandfather's assistance. Still, Jake's social media is flooded with glamorous posts, new designer watches, dinners at expensive restaurants, luxurious vacations. He seems fixated on showcasing a life that is far from real. My parents, Richard and Susan Carter, are no different. They appear to be enjoying their retirement life in Florida, but that too wouldn't be possible without grandfather's support. Their retirement fund, the deposit for a high-end retirement home, everything is based on grandfather's money. My parents have always been cold toward me, but indulgent with Jake. That hasn't changed since childhood. I covered my tuition with scholarships and my living expenses with part-time jobs while I was in college. Meanwhile, my brother depended on our parents for everything: study abroad expenses, living costs, all of it. The contrast still hurts to remember. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. That was another of grandfather's sayings. I've lived by those words. I studied relentlessly, worked desperately, and refused to depend on anyone. I built my career in the pharmaceutical industry, developed my assets, and created a life that needs no one's support. The high-rise apartment overlooking the New York skyline was earned by my own hands. The moderate luxury in my life, always within my means, was a conscious choice. As I lifted my suitcase, the anxiety about this year's Thanksgiving grew stronger. Every year, the distorted relationships in our family only intensified. My brother's obsession with appearances, my parents' preferential love, and my grandfather's increasingly anxious gaze. This year, those distortions felt close to a breaking point. On the way to the airport, sitting in the taxi, I thought about the trip. The Westward was a 5-star, internationally renowned hotel built in 1982, an Italian Renaissance-style building with suites priced at over $900 per night. The special Thanksgiving dinner was said to cost over $300 per person. But against that glittering backdrop, our family's reality was fragile and warped. My brother's high-rolling lifestyle, my parents' comfortable retirement, castles built on the sand of grandfather's support. And this year, those castles were about to crack. From Los Angeles International Airport to the resort, California's gentle sunlight streamed through the taxi windows. Thanksgiving Day greeted me with perfect weather as I arrived at the Westward. I was the last to arrive. Pulling my navy Rimawa suitcase, I stepped into the Italian Renaissance-styled building. My simple yet elegant theory suit had wrinkled slightly during the long flight. The lobby spread out in clean dignity. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. Footsteps whispered softly across the marble floor. Other guests were already enjoying their Thanksgiving afternoon. On my way to the reception desk, I spotted my parents in a corner of the lobby. They seemed to be talking quietly. My mother, Susan Gammon, wore what looked like a brand new resort dress. My father, Richard, was casually dressed, appropriate for his age. Our eyes met briefly, then darted away. "Ms. Carter, I apologize, but I don't seem to find your reservation," the receptionist said, her tone apologetic as she tapped on the keyboard, brow furrowing. I have all the reservations for your family except. The clink of high-priced heels interrupted her. I turned and saw Jake striding toward us, a triumphant grin on his face. A Hermes Birkin bag hung from his wife's arm, and a Cartier watch gleamed on his wrist. "Oh, finally Laura showed up," he said, sarcasm dripping from his voice. The receptionist continued checking the system. Other guests began glancing toward us. "How strange. There's no reservation," Jake said, raising his voice just enough to draw attention. His Louis Vuitton luggage stood in stark contrast to my dark-colored case. "Actually," Jake stepped closer, his smile widening. "I only made reservations for our family," he announced, his voice echoing through the lobby. "A room for me, my wife, and my daughter, and one for Mom and Dad, just for the real family." Silence followed. The front desk staff stood frozen. My parents turned their backs even more noticeably. The air around me hardened. After a slow, deep breath, I spoke, my expression unchanged. "I see. Then I'll leave." My tone was cooler than I expected. I re-gripped the suitcase handle, nodded politely to the receptionist, and took out my phone to call a taxi. "Wait!" Jake's voice rose, but I was already turning away. I felt the sympathetic stares from the staff as I walked toward the exit. Jake looked stunned, though his triumphant grin clung stubbornly to his face. My parents stood awkwardly, saying nothing. The quiet lobby echoed with the sound of my footsteps. Outside, afternoon sunlight poured in through the glass doors. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze. As I waited for the taxi, I realized that the Thanksgiving holiday I was supposed to spend at this luxury resort was already over. Yet in that moment, a strange sense of liberation filled my chest. My grandfather's words returned to me. "Be a person who can stand on their own feet." Now I finally understood them. In the few minutes I waited for the taxi, I looked back at the magnificent exterior of the hotel. The Adams-style building seemed to tell a story of centuries past, lavishly decorated for Thanksgiving. Luxury cars continued to arrive, and well-dressed families stepped through the lobby's glass doors. Through the glass, I could make out my niece, Emily, dressed in a gown far too expensive for a child. She fidgeted behind her father, glancing around as if looking for me. Of course, Thanksgiving had always meant gifts. That ritual was something we had performed religiously every year. The pearl hair clip, neatly packaged, rested quietly in my suitcase. The taxi arrived, and I slid into the back seat, giving the driver the address for Los Angeles International Airport. As we pulled away, I was already searching on my smartphone for the next available flight to New York. Thanksgiving airfares were outrageous, but I didn't mind. Compared to the emotional energy I had wasted every year during this season, money felt insignificant. In the rearview mirror, the westward grew smaller, its gleaming form bathed in afternoon sunlight, a monument to my family's superficial glamour. For the first time, a crack had appeared in that facade. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. There was no going back. The inside of the taxi was quiet, insulated from the noise outside. The air conditioning kept the temperature cool, and the high-quality leather seats slowly eased the tension in my shoulders. Outside the window, Malibu's resort scenery passed by. Neatly lined palm trees, white luxury homes, glimpses of the Pacific's sparkling surface. Views that would normally captivate me now felt distant and muted. I pulled out my phone and dialed my grandfather's number without hesitation. The ringtone stretched longer than usual. Finally, he answered. "Laura, what's wrong?" His voice carried its familiar composure. "I have something to report," I said evenly. I recounted what had happened at the hotel. No embellishment, no emotion, just facts. How my reservation was missing, what Jake had said, how I had left. I spoke in sequence, calmly. On the other end, I could hear his breathing grow heavier. He was holding back his anger. I didn't add a single word to provoke sympathy. "I understand," he said at last. "Leave the rest to me." His voice was low and weighted. In those few words lay an omen of what was to come. Minutes after we hung up, my phone began to light up. First, Jake. Over 10 missed calls within 15 minutes. Then a message. "Laura, Emily wants to see you. She was looking forward to our annual Thanksgiving. Can't you think about a child's feelings?" "I never, ma'am." Another message followed almost immediately. "My friends are coming over for dinner tonight. I was planning to post the perfect family Thanksgiving on Instagram. Do you know how embarrassing this is? How am I supposed to explain this situation?" His voice messages grew higher, more hysterical with each call. Then emails from my parents began to trickle in. We could have added another room, my mother wrote, cold as ever. But as Jake said, the reservations were designed around the real family. Another email followed. You're independent now, aren't you? She continued. If you can afford it, why not just book another room yourself? With your salary, it shouldn't be a big deal. What's all this emotional drama for? My father's message was even sharper. Jake has a family, a wife, and a child. You do know that, don't you? Can't you just keep quiet and bear with it over Thanksgiving? That's always been your problem. You think only about yourself and never about the family. Then my mother again, portraying me as the villain. We had plans for social media posts. We were going to take such nice pictures of you and Emily. Now it's all ruined. Each message tightened the feeling in my chest, but none of the words were new. This was the language of my childhood. Jake protected, me dismissed. As we neared the airport, more messages arrived. Because you're selfish, Emily is crying, Jake wrote. She waited so long to see her aunt. He used his daughter as a shield to the very end. All I could see behind his words was vanity and wounded pride. Another email from my mother followed, dripping with sarcasm. Poor Jake. If you knew how hard he tries to provide for Emily, you wouldn't be so heartless. You wouldn't understand. A child's education requires money. I felt no urge to reply. If anything, I was grateful that everything had finally been laid bare without any effort on my part. Just before reaching the airport, an email from my grandfather arrived. I am proud of your decision. I know everything. Warmth welled in my eyes. Not sadness, but quiet resolve. A new chapter had begun, and it was already gaining momentum. My phone continued buzzing relentlessly. Worried messages from Jake demanded answers. Accusatory emails from my parents blamed me for tearing the family apart. But I had reached a place where their voices could no longer reach me. I stepped out of the taxi and walked toward the terminal, booking my flight to New York as I went. A strange sense of freedom followed me through the automatic doors. This was the moment I was finally free from the illusion of a real family. About 30 minutes after boarding, an email from my grandfather came through. The recipients listed every member of the family. The following is my final decision, the message began, dignified as always. Today, on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely wounded our family's dignity. The cruel treatment of Laura is an injury to the name of the Carter family and will not be tolerated. I hereby freeze, effective immediately, all financial support given to Richard, Susan, and Jake. Let me remind you that your respective lifestyles depend entirely on my support. Those blinded by vanity and pretentious living, who have forgotten what family truly means, deserve no further privilege. As I finished reading, my phone started ringing again. Jake. His voicemail followed quickly. Laura, please answer. Convince Grandpa. Desperation had replaced arrogance. Without that monthly support, his life would collapse. Then came emails from my parents. The condescension was gone, replaced by panic. This is about our retirement, my mother wrote. Can you please talk to your grandfather? The $150,000 deposit for the luxury retirement home will be forfeited. Our medical insurance subsidies will stop. Reality had finally struck. Another message followed. I'm sorry for what I said earlier, she wrote. This is a family crisis. I turned off my phone. Outside the airplane window, a vast sea of clouds stretched endlessly across the sky. The perfect family Thanksgiving photos that appeared every year on social media would not be posted this time. For Jake, that might hurt even more than the financial loss. The plane flew steadily toward New York, free of turbulence. The passenger beside me scrolled through Thanksgiving dinner recipes on his phone. This should have been the moment I handed Emily her gift in the hotel lounge. Instead, I went home. When I finally connected to my apartment's Wi-Fi, my phone exploded with notifications. Over 100 unread messages. Most were from Jake, growing more frantic. What am I supposed to do? I can't pay the loans. What about Emily's school fees? My parents' messages were equally desperate. Our retirement home won't refund the deposit. Our medical insurance will be self-paid next month. Then came my grandfather's final notice to the family. This decision is irreversible. Consider it the consequence of your actions. I set my phone down and made myself a cup of tea. By now, I should have been sitting at a lavish Thanksgiving dinner, $300 per person. I smiled faintly at the thought. Every year, Jake posted photos of those dinners online, while drowning in credit card debt behind the scenes. Another call came in, this time from Jake's wife. Her voice trembled as she spoke about hidden debts, overdue credit cards, and cracks forming in their marriage. Then more messages from my parents, even in their begging, still siding with Jake. I dropped a slice of lemon into my tea. Tomorrow, work awaited me. New research data needed analysis. My life, built through discipline, savings, and self-reliance, remained intact. Outside my window, New York's skyline glimmered. Quiet lights dotted the towers like stars. Vanity fades, stability endures. And for the first time, I felt completely at peace. 2 weeks passed since Thanksgiving. Early December arrived, and the first snow dusted New York in pure white. Day after day, I immersed myself in work, buried in new projects inside the pharmaceutical company's laboratory. Meanwhile, my family's circumstances changed completely. At first, the signs appeared quietly on social media. Jake's Instagram, once updated almost daily, went dark. His last post was from the day before Thanksgiving. A photo of an Hermes bag on a polished restaurant table, tagged with hashtag #DreamLifestyle. The caption read, "What a wonderful life." Now it looked painfully ironic. Emails from my father finally took on a contrite tone. "I've been reflecting on our years of extravagant living," he wrote. "We spoiled Jake too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry." Similar messages came from my mother. With their medical insurance subsidies cut off, they were finally realizing how expensive healthcare truly was. "Our pension alone is nowhere near enough," she admitted. "I finally understand how luxuriously we were living." Jake's situation was far worse. One evening, I received an unexpected call from his wife. Her voice was strained, trembling beneath exhaustion. "I found hidden debts," she said. "Credit cards I didn't know existed. I'm in shock. We can't afford this life anymore." Without my grandfather's support, their facade of affluence collapsed almost overnight. They were considering moving to a cheaper house. Public schools for Emily were now on the table. "Jake cries every night," she added quietly. Even their marriage, once paraded online as flawless, had begun to fracture. In contrast, my life remained calm. I worked from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. On weekends, I attended investment study groups, reviewed my financial portfolio, and continued living within reasonable means. Just days earlier, I had been appointed team leader for a new research project. A salary increase was already in discussion. My investments were stable, my future felt clear. I had always believed that vanity provided fleeting satisfaction, while savings offered lifelong security. Now, watching my parents struggle with retirement fears and Jake drown in debt, that belief felt undeniably true. Over the next 2 weeks, the desperate messages slowed. Calls that once came daily now arrived only once or twice a week. The tone shifted, from anger to denial to quiet resignation. Jake's latest email was short. "Emily will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus. I never thought it would come to this." It was the first time he seemed to face reality. My parents were also forced to adapt. They began discussing a move from their luxury Florida retirement community to a more affordable condominium. Medical bills piled up. The dream of an effortless retirement had shattered. One email from my father stood out. "We lived with the wrong values for many years." Whether that realization would truly change them remained uncertain. One night, a brief message arrived from my grandfather. "Awakening to the truth of life often brings pain, but it is necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson." I didn't reply. I saved the message. That night, I stood by my window, staring at the New York City skyline. Stars flickered between skyscrapers. The city remained unmoved, unflinching, just like the life I had built. 3 months passed. Early spring signs began to emerge. Nothing in my life had deteriorated. If anything, it had grown more fulfilling. The research project I led progressed smoothly, and just last week I received news of another promotion. My salary would rise to $190,000. My investments continued to grow steadily. One afternoon, I stood at my office window, gazing at the Hudson River. Sunlight spilled across its surface, casting a gentle glow over the city. Fresh stacks of research data weighed down my desk, demanding attention. These were moments I cherished, hours spent among data, studies, and quiet ambition. Then one day, a package arrived from my grandfather. Inside was a single-strand pearl necklace. Enclosed was a small card, written in his elegant script. "True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet." I held the necklace for a long time. I kept minimal contact with my parents after everything that had happened. They had moved into a smaller home and struggled to manage medical expenses, but they were adjusting. For the first time, my mother's messages carried a different tone. "Luxury brings momentary joy," she wrote, "but there is real security in a grounded life." Jake and his family had relocated to a modest suburban neighborhood. Emily adjusted to public school and now took the bus each morning. Jake's once active social media accounts remained silent. In one of his few messages, he admitted, "It all feels so vain now, posting just to keep up appearances." His days were filled with negotiations over credit card payments. His marriage remained strained, but at least they were no longer pretending. As for me, I began setting new goals. I envisioned building a stronger career in pharmaceutical research, mentoring young scientists, teaching them what I had learned about discipline, patience, and independence. During holidays, I spent time with my investment study group. The people around me lived steady, no-nonsense lives. Conversations were honest, free of pretense, refreshing. That Thanksgiving has taught us all something about financial freedom, the hollowness of image-based living, and the true meaning of family. Inside my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had bought for Emily remained unopened. I would give it to her someday, when she was old enough to understand that pride comes from independence, and that a fleeting like on social media earns no real respect. Outside my window, a gentle spring breeze stirred the trees, whispering of change. And for the first time in my life, I knew with certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. Outside my window, a gentle spring breeze stirred the branches, as if whispering of renewal. The city breathed quietly beneath it all, steady, indifferent, enduring. New York had never promised comfort, only opportunity, and I had learned how to meet it on my own terms. Life settled into a rhythm that felt honest. My mornings began early, coffee in hand, reviewing data before stepping into the lab. My days were filled with discussions about research design, trial outcomes, and long-term projections. My evenings were calm: books, light meals, occasional calls with colleagues who shared the same grounded outlook on life. There was no urgency to impress anyone anymore. The noise had faded. Occasionally, messages still arrived from my family, but they no longer carried the weight they once did. My parents spoke about budgeting and doctor appointments, about learning to live within limits they had ignored for decades. Jake's updates were sparse and subdued. No more grand declarations, no more staged photos. Emily, I heard, was doing well. She had made friends at her new school. She liked riding the bus. She talked about science class and art projects instead of brands and vacations. That, more than anything, brought me quiet relief. One evening, as I organized my desk, my hand brushed against the drawer where the pearl hair clip rested. I took it out, still sealed in its box, untouched. I didn't feel regret. Some things simply needed time. Time to be understood. Time to be deserved. I placed it back gently. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. An upcoming presentation to senior leadership. Another step forward. Another responsibility earned. I smiled faintly and returned to my work. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one, illuminating the skyline. Somewhere across the river, the Hudson reflected the fading sunlight, steady and unchanging. I thought again of my grandfather's words that had guided me since childhood, words that had finally reshaped the fate of our family. Standing on one's own feet was never about walking away from others. It was about standing firm when the ground beneath you finally revealed what it was made of. And in that certainty, I felt no bitterness, no triumph, only peace. The season had changed. So had I. Bye-bye,